Amnesty International.
You should run. I need to get running. My beer's getting warm.
I love you, man.
Take care.
Take it easy.
How's it going, man?
Never better. Can I?
We're actually not allowed.
You're not allowed.
No, we're
It's
not allowed.
single party consent state, so whether you're allowed to or not, I'm allowed. So, you work for a corporation called Amnesty International.
We're not a corporation.
You're not a corporation.
No,
What are you? A
we're-
non-for-profit?
Yeah, we're a non-profit organization.
Non-profit organization.
Yeah.
It's still a corporation. They're lying to you. I'm sorry, and they're allowed to lie to you because this whole thing that's going on right now is de facto. By definition, the word de facto means instituted. Okay, the Governor General is instituted. He then hires by contract the Speaker of the House. Thereby, he never enters the Parliament and doesn't create the conflict of interest, okay? Because the whole thing is just a flip-flap of contracts, okay? A de jure government is of the people. It's what they tried to create in the United States with the Declaration, okay? The Republic. Of the people, for the people, and we're all equal, and equality is paramount under God's law, okay? Amnesty International, as agents for Amnesty International, I am commanding you today to investigate the 50,000 children that were murdered in Canada by the United Church, the Anglican Church, and the Catholic Church. And it is my understanding that Amnesty International, as an organization or a corporation or corporate fiction, or a bunch of people who care so much that they stand out on the street and they ask for people to help other people, because you guys are the missionaries. It's the people who actually put themselves forward, whether you get paid to it or not. Okay, you're putting yourself forward trying to help other people. There's a big karma thing in there, okay? These guys up here, they're not helping people anymore because they're turning blind eyes to crimes that are affecting all of us. And that's why we need to convene, for the first time in the history of the world, a real government of the people, for the people. Because in the States, they went bankrupt and the king from England paid it off, so he owns the States now too. But we're the first ones in the history of the Commonwealth to have a Commonwealth corporation that runs the country, to actually, the leader was found guilty. He was found guilty. They always dissolve the parliament before they actually make the ruling, okay? It's all about trials. It's a court. It's also a church. It's also a corporation. And he was found guilty, and thereby there is no confidence in the entire organization that he's a leader of. He himself is responsible for it. He can take the responsibility for the whole thing if he takes the responsibility. But if he does not take the responsibility himself, it goes downhill on everybody who's part of the organization. This is why we need to form a new government. We all govern ourselves in this new government, though. There's no prime minister. A minister, by definition, is somebody to...
Anarchy?
No, I'm not suggesting anarchy. No, not at all. Anarchy actually is what we live in. I'm not an anarchist in any way, but nature itself is anarchy because it's ruled by chaos and order, right? So it's not about instilling anarchy. It's like we've always had anarchy. Then God's law came along and they figured all that stuff out, and it's all stories in the Bible, right? And then they derived common law from the natural law. And then legislation, all this stuff, is derived from common law, their common law right to institute a contract with the Governor General as an appointee for the redcoats, essentially, from London.
What is it you're requesting from us?
Oh, I'm not requesting anything. I'm putting you on notice that as your corporation or your organization or whatever it may be, Amnesty International has interest in the 50,000 children that need to be repatriated into Canada. Basically, they need to be accepted as Canadian citizens.
Which children are you talking about?
There's graves in Alberta. 50,000 children were buried by these 3 churches that I mentioned. And
when was this?
Stephen Harper apologized for it last year to the First Nations people.
These are natives that you're talking about?
Yes, First Nations.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
Yeah, the residential schools.
Yeah. It's appalling.
It's appalling, but the RCMP is not investigating. Why aren't they exhuming the bodies and finding out what really happened? And
because it's not in the best interest.
Because he flipped the contract at everybody and he asked for forgiveness, and forgiveness is paramount in this world. Anybody who asks for forgiveness will be forgiven. That's why they're always asking for forgiveness, so they don't get in trouble for the crimes that they're committing. Max Radico. Pleasure to meet you.
Emily.
Pleasure. Grasshopper Media. Don't work too hard.
All right.
You too.